Koutou katoa ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and welcome to the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee meeting. We're going to kick things off today with a karakia from Councillor Galloway.
Kia ora, e te hui, whae te matauranga kia marama, kia whae taka ngā mahi katoa, te maia tu kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. For this gathering, we seek knowledge for understanding and purpose in all we do. Let us stand tall, be strong, and show respect for each other. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks for that, Anne. Next, we have apologies. I have an apology for lateness from the Mayor. Any other apologies? No, in that case, I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Jimmy? Okay, and all in favour, please put your thumbs up. Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. I have a declaration of interest to make for item 11, Capital Endowment Fund applications for Wilston Brass. So I'll step aside at that stage, and Councillor Coker will chair. Any other declarations of interest? No, that's great. Thank you. Confirmation of previous minutes. Tim and Andrew are going to move and second those. Thumbs up for in favour, please. Any against? No, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. Right, so today we have two public forums, which is going to be really good. Initially, we have first up Emma Hunter from Sustainable Coastlines. So Emma's got a presentation for us and is going to talk to us about the work that Sustainable Coastlines are doing locally. Welcome, Emma. It's up to you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm just going to share my screen. Perfect. Oh. Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having me to speak today. My name is Emma Hunter, and I'm going to be speaking to an issue that is facing the Avon Heathcote Estuary Te Hutai, that is pre-production plastic pellet pollution. So how I've come onto this issue is through my master's degree. I've just finished my master's in wildlife biology and conservation through the University of Edinburgh Napier, and my research project was the quantification and characterisation of pre-production pellet pollution in the Avon Heathcote Estuary Te Hutai. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but what I'm going to do is break down what that is, why it's happening, and what we can do to try and solve that. So I'm coming in with my student background, and then I will introduce myself in the role of Sustainable Coastlines. So hopefully everyone is familiar with the ecosystem of the Avon Heathcote Estuary Te Hutai. It is a really rich, biologically diverse ecosystem, supporting over 30,000 birds at peak times of year. It also is culturally and historically significant as a place of Mahinga Kai gathering, and also a place of human settlement for Maori tribes and the Europeans as well, going back over 600 years. So it is a really rich environmental site. But unfortunately, it is being polluted, and one of those pollutants is pre-production plastic pellets. What are these pellets? These pellets, they come from oil, and then they are made from oil into these tiny little plastic beads that form the raw material for all plastic items. These plastic pellets are then shipped and dispersed to different plastic industries and manufacturers that then use those pellets to melt them down and make them into the product that they sell. So these plastic beads are the raw ingredient to all plastic items. And unfortunately, they are being leached to the environment, and the estuary is no exception to that. This is a photo of the estuary bank, and you can see highlighted in the circles these plastic pellets nestled in the sediment. So my research project looked into the presence of these pre-production pellets in the estuary, and across 35 samples at 7 sites, I found 3,819 of these pellets. This sampling was by no means extensive. It was just one person doing the work over 2 days, and that is a significant amount of pellets to find. You can see the accumulation circles in the corner, the southeast corner in particular. There is a high accumulation zone there. Couple of reasons for that. They could be being delivered by the Opoaho Heathcote River from the plastics industry towards into the land. Also, the stormwater and drain outlets could be delivering these pellets into the estuary. And also the wind direction was predominantly blowing into the southeast, which could be accumulating the pellets there. But this does highlight the pellet problem in the estuary. I did also characterize these pellets and looked at what they are made up of. The predominant pellet type was clear and made of polyethylene. So these pellets most likely had a destination of being made into plastic packaging, plastic bags, and also items such as bubble wrap was what these pellets were intended to be before they were lost into the environment. So what can we do? We can try and work with the plastics industry to let them know they are losing these pellets and to adopt best management practices to prevent the loss of these pellets into the environment. Use less plastic in general. Less plastic means less pellets are required. And also stop these pellets from traveling down storm water drains and getting into the aquatic environment. And simply building awareness of the problem, which I'm appreciative of having you asked me to speak today. Thank you to these institutions and individuals who helped me carry out my research. And just to introduce myself in my professional role as a programme coordinator for Sustainable Coastlines in Otatahi. Sustainable Coastlines are a not-for-profit organisation focused on restoring the Māori of our moana through outreach and education. So keep an eye out for our events that will be running in the Otatahi Christchurch region. Thank you for your time.
Great timing. Thanks so much, Emma. Do we have a question from anyone? There's a lot of information in a short time. What's your your next event coming up?
So our next event is going to be in conjunction with the Mother of All Cleanups, which is run with the Estuary Trust. They clean up the whole of the estuary, and we're going to be focused on the New Brighton beach clean side, and that will be on May 7th. So we haven't launched any event or registration pages yet, but do keep your eye out for that happening in the next few weeks.
That's great. Thanks so much, Emma. Really good information. Really good to look at your research there and see just the scale of the issue. And where it's one of those things that we're going to have to take forward and make sure that the enforcement around different industries is done, and look at our stormwater systems and what's getting through. So thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So next we have Mark Gerard from Historic Places Canterbury. Welcome, Mark.
Welcome. I take it you can hear me?
We can indeed.
Excellent. Chair, Mayor and Councillors, thank you for allowing Historic Places Canterbury to make this public forum presentation. Historic Places Canterbury, as you will be aware, has expressed our concerns with the report on the Upper Riccarton War Memorial Library. They were briefly the following: HPC could not find a heritage assessment from the heritage team. We could find no reference to the council heritage strategy, Our Heritage, Our Taonga, and a lack of public engagement. Now, recently I made a personal deputation to the Waikura Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board concerning the recommended demolition of the Wooden Park Caretakers Residence. My deputation raised the same three concerns as HPC raised on the Upper Riccarton War Memorial Library report. The committee board resolved for the report to lay on the table whilst a heritage assessment is done and public engagement on the future of the building is sought. HPC is very concerned there may be a pattern that if a building is not listed or scheduled, then Our City, Our Taonga does not apply, nor advice or input from the council heritage team be sought. If this is the case, HPC believes this is contrary to Our City, Our Taonga. HPC considers it should be the council's default setting, and the staff should be proactive on this. If there is a decision to be made on a building which has a social history or heritage, no matter how minor, whatever its district plan status, Our Heritage, Our Taonga applies, and heritage team advice and input should be sought. This advice input should be sought very early in the CC processes. HPC seeks your support for this. We're also concerned, HPC is concerned, public engagement priority is determined by the early decision-making made up leading to the final report. HPC considers where practical public engagement should occur early on in the CCC processes to determine if there's a community interest in the future of the building. HPC seeks your support for this. Our third point, the greenest building is the one that already exists. I've circulated the publication, There's No Place Like Old Homes, Reuse, Recycle and Reduce Carbon. This is from Historic England. Historic Places Canterbury respectfully requests the council and its entities should adopt whole of life cycle carbon cycle costings when costing its buildings. Any comparison between refurbishment of an existing and demolishing building new should include these costs. The demolition cost should include end-of-life costings. In addition, Historic Places Canterbury has an interest in the future of the Barnett Avenue pensioner cottages, the council's first and New Zealand's first council elderly housing. Historic Places Canterbury has the expectation the heritage team should be consulted on their heritage significance. Historic Places Canterbury seeks your support that for any financial calculations relating to any decisions on the future of the Barnett Ave cottages include whole of life carbon cycle costs for both refurbishment and demolition new build. The demolition costs include end of life costings. Thank you for listening to this public forum presentation.
Thanks so much for that, Mark. I see that we've got about a minute and a half left of your time. So does anyone have a question on that? Yanni?
Thanks, Mark, for your deputation. Have you also have you read the report around the Centennial Hall being demolished as well? Did you have any views on that?
I haven't yet that one. Ross Gray is, I've been a bit busy. Ross Gray is following that up and has been reading the report and making the phone calls. I can ask Ross to get in touch with you on that.
Maybe we could ask staff to send a copy to Mr. Gerard and maybe seek some feedback.
That'd be very grateful. Thank you very much.
Can do. Make sure someone's got a note of that. Right, any further questions? No? Okay, thanks so much for that, Mark. It's important that all of our policies and things are taken into account really early on in the process because it does have an impact as to how things end up at the end. And it's really good that people like you are keeping an eye on that and can raise issues when they're not happening. Okay, so thanks so much.
Thank you.
Right, we have no deputations today, no presentation of petitions, but what we do have is Chrissy Williams here today to present the Te Tera Kahiku Hiku minutes for December, February and March. So welcome, Chrissy. Thanks for coming in on Zoom. Sorry that it's not in person.
Thanks, Sarah. It's fine. It's good when everyone's on Zoom. So tēnā koutou katoa. So this is the quarterly report from Te Tera Kahiku. We've been continuing to meet. There's 1 or 2 months we haven't had to, but we're meeting on Zoom as you are. So you'll see by the summary of the minutes that most of our recommendations to LINZ have been around events or about renewal of leases or licenses. So you'll remember that LINZ license only do leases and licenses up to 6 months. So some of those have been running out and people have applied for renewal of those. Those are subject to an extension of 6 months or until the land transfers to council, and that's starting to happen. So we're in a very transitional stage now with some of the land owned by LINZ and some owned by the City Council. We've also had one application in the Port Hills area, and I'm sorry, there's an error in the summary. It says it was a renewal for 6 months lease. The Berry Farm in Sumner was for a lease for 2 years. So that was inaccurate in the summary, but correct in the minutes. So, and staff used the policy that you approved in September 2020 to do that assessment of that application. So some of it was done retrospectively, but it was a good chance to apply that policy. So that's done because council owns the Port Hills land, so it's council land. So we're now at the stage where we've got the challenge of renewing leases for LINZ or licenses for the 6 month period, but we haven't got a clear process for what happens now when the land that the leases or licenses are on transfer to council. And I suppose what I would ask, and it's probably more an operational thing, but I think you should be aware of it. We need some kind of clear table or spreadsheet of all the leases and licenses that are coming up, that are expiring, and a note of when that land is likely or is going to transfer or has transferred to council. And my suggestion to you, and as a strong one, is that some of those leases can roll over if they're for something simple, but some of the small community gardens. But the policy says that if any of the leases have a high public interest, conflict with other uses, effectively stop public access, or require a lease that's longer, probably longer than 6 months, it needs to go through a more a tender process or a consultation process. And if it's longer than 10 years, the decision has to be made by council. For shorter than that, it can be made by the parks manager of parks. So what we haven't got clear direction on is how those leases, especially more significant ones, and one of those that we have approved renewal of was the Climate Action Campus, how council's going to review those leases. So we shouldn't assume that they just roll over, because we need to make sure that they fit with the recovery regeneration plan and with your activity plan and other policies of council. So the decision for LINZ to approve them is different for the your reasons for approving them. So that would just be my comment, that we need the resource and process within council staff to be able to take reports through to TTK to make recommendations on those more significant land uses in the red zone, I'm not allowed to call it that, in the corridor that are coming through as the land transfers. So that's my main comment, and I just would be interested in your response to that and how you can help us make sure that's going to happen.
Right, thank you. So I guess we address that one first of all, and I think it's one of those things where we really need an update from staff, and as you suggest, a table of all of those leases and licenses that are currently held, when they expire, and what the proposal is for going forward for renewal, rollovers, all of those kind of things, and how that fits in with the council policy. And that actually probably needs to happen not just for currently council-owned land, but stuff that will be council-owned very soon as well, right throughout all of those ex-red zone areas, both the river corridor and also the other areas that aren't part of the river corridor. And I see Mary's thumb up there. So that's a piece of work that that will happen then. Mary, is there a potential time frame for that?
I'll check with the team how far off the information from LINZ is, and come back, and we'll send an email out next week letting you know whether it'll be next meeting or the following meeting.
Yeah, we've got a problem with meeting schedules for us specifically, in that we will be breaking committee meetings over the annual plan time.
Right.
So if it's not able, yeah.
We could bring it through as a briefing in that case.
I think that's a really good idea as a first step, and then for her to have it officially reported through. Right, so other questions?
Sorry, Sarah, just add in there's LINZ do have a table of when leases are expiring, and so they've got that. It's the second step of how those leases, which funnel on the council's policy, they need to then go through, because there's a number of criteria that need to be considered. So that's what's missing. So it's the council side of that needs the additional column or two in that table.
And I think that a briefing is really good, because actually we need to remind ourselves of how that process is going to work. It's not one that we've had to look at again as councillors since we made that decision. And I think especially with the co-governance conversations coming up, that's really important for us to understand everything that's happening in that space. So move now to other questions. So Anne, you've got one?
Yes, kia ora. Thank you. Just in terms of that process, how much communication happens between the actual groups that are being affected by these lease rollovers or these arrangements from staff? So are they kept in the loop with what's happening?
So that's probably not a question for Chrissy though. Chrissy's here for TTK stuff, and
Yeah.
you're muted. Yep.
Sorry, I meant that question for Mary, sorry.
I'm not aware of that. We haven't got Andrew online yet, but we'll report back on that.
Yeah, I think that that'll be part of the broader briefing that we have on those processes that are being had. But for now, if we could stick to the minutes of Te Tira Kahikuhiku, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I've got someone with their hand up whose thing is read co. Is that Courtney? No?
Yes, it is.
Courtney, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was just wanting to comment on the communication that we are having with those groups as they are, as the LINZ applications are coming over to council. They are being kept in the loop, saying we've got communication going out to them saying your lease is coming up for transfer over from LINZ to council, what that process is going to look like. And then when they do get transferred from LINZ to council, then I call them up and I have the conversation about how that looks differently. Because at the moment, it's not too different as they come over and they're all on rolling leases. But as the conversation develops, it'll be more clear for them what the process will be as well.
That's great. Thanks for that, Courtney.
Thanks.
All right. Any further questions on the minutes? And no. Well, that's pretty easy then. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Chrissy, before you switch off?
No, I don't think so. Our attendance at TTK meetings is pretty good, but this sort of feels like there's a lessening of interest just because of the decisions, or they're not decisions, the recommendations we're making. There's not a lot of significance. So, yeah, it's really hard to keep a group motivated when there's not they're not actually having a big influence on what's happening. So, so I just think that the sooner that we can get the establishment committee set up and that is able to make decisions on its own behalf, I think that will make things a bit more transparent and have a community, a group of community members that's actually really engaged. So
that's great. So thank you so much, Chrissy, and thank you for coming on today, and thanks for the time and energy that you're putting into Te Tira Kahikuhiku as well. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, Sarah. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. So do I have a mover for those minutes, for accepting those minutes? Pauline and Melanie, move in second. All those in favour, put up your thumbs, please. Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now we move through to the community facilities update. And we've got Paul and Sylvia here to talk us through that, and a presentation that's on the hub for everyone to look at as well. And I'm assuming will be shared on the screen. I think. Check my screen. Have we got? Yep, there it goes.
Oh, good. I think we should also have John. I think John was going to introduce us.
Okay.
Oh, hi. Sorry, Simone here. Unfortunately, Paul is a bit late, I understand. Is it possible to go to the next item and we'll come back to community facilities?
That's fine. We can move on to the Heritage Incentive Grant applications. Okay, so people switch over to that. So Heritage Incentive Grant applications. We've got here, hang on, have we got? I'm just checking to see who else is here. The Mayor was quite keen to be here for this item and isn't here yet. So we'll move to
when you're ready.
We might just come back to that one though when the Mayor's here. She was quite keen to be here for that one. So we'll move to the item 10, which is Christ College for an Emergency New Zealand access easement in the Botanic Gardens. If we've got Russell here. Yes. Yep, we do. Thanks, Russell. Introduce this one briefly.
Thank you. So, as you know, Christ College
building a new sports complex in the at the rear of their sports fields, which borders onto the Botanic Gardens yard and Ilex yard. FENZ, which is the Fire Emergency New Zealand Limited, New Zealand, they need guaranteed access, 24-hour access to the building, but unfortunately they can't get their engines through the Christ College grounds past the buildings. They can go down the side of the museum and the Botanic Gardens, which is how they would attend to a fire if there was in the Ilex Centre or Botanic Gardens. And there is a fire hydrant just outside the yard in the asphalt there, in the driveway, our driveway. So what they've approached us to put in a access that will go from the fire hydrant across a little bit of lawn into through the concrete block wall and into the Christ College area. This will be only for FENS access, and it's in emergency. Christ College cannot use it. It's only for FENS. And the easement is just to ensure that they have access at any time of the day or night.
Okay. Right, do we have any questions on this? Tim?
I'm happy to move it, Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Phil. But Tim's got a question first up.
So any costs associated with this, are the school willing to pick up for that because they're the ones that require it?
Yes, so these Christ College are paying for all of our legal fees associated with it.
But also any installation of anything required. So they're picking
yes.
up the yep, great, thank you.
Yes, we're not paying for anything.
Great, yeah, excellent, thank you.
Yeah. And is this the fire hydrant that would be used for example, ILEX and stuff as well?
Yes, and there's one other added advantage, excuse me, in that the fire on the gate that's going next in the concrete, on the concrete block wall, where the inlet valves are, that also provides access to the water in the swimming pool in Christ College, and FENS will be able to use that water to fight any fires in the ILEX or into the Botanic Gardens buildings.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Phil's happy to move this. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
I saw Tim's thumb first. Sorry, James.
I couldn't clearly see it.
Yeah. Sorry, you're on page 2 for me. The way it's working at the moment. So Phil and Tim, do I have any further questions? Any debate?
Aye.
In that case, I will put up your hands for aye, please. Anyone against? No, declare that carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
Right, Simone, do we have Paul yet?
Yes, we certainly do. He's ready to go. So we'll just get his presentation
Great.
loaded up. So just in next minute or so, should be ready to go.
Excellent. So we're moving back to item 8, community facilities update.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. John Fulsell here. With your permission, I'll introduce the item, and Paul will continue. So we have a PowerPoint presentation, essentially putting a bit of colour and life around the community facilities update report, which is item number 8 on the agenda. The purpose of the report is really to update this committee on community facilities, but more particularly the activity and sort of the building of social capital that occurs around this activity. This is the first report back to this committee on the portfolio, so we are very keen afterwards to get your feedback, as we want to make this a regular occurrence, and I will take on board your feedback to make any changes we need to next time. So essentially, I'm introducing the first slide. Community facilities. Council makes a substantial investment in these. We have about 91 active facilities at the moment, worth about $100 million. Council last year increased the maintenance vote and capital spend vote. So we're in a position to start keeping these facilities in a manner that befits their importance and on a sustainable benefit into the future. Really quickly, look, the heart of the beast, why council invests. The council invests, well, to provide local venues, hosting events, activities, classes. really to promote community network and reduce social isolation. We also provide venues so the community and the council through boards and other organisations can engage and increase participation in civic life. We aim to provide facilities to build community resilience, social capital, increase community capacity, particularly to support responses to major stresses such as climate change, terror, and like more recently, the effects of COVID-19. We provide to support a network of volunteers, opportunities for community partnerships regarding the provision and activation and operation of facilities. So we're building strong communities by energising and supporting groups. Lastly, but not leastly, the provision of facilities and the community development services that go around them, that accompany them, provide a celebration of local identity and diversity, providing venues for events, arts, culture, heritage, sport and recreation. I think the why we provide these is always the most important question. The reason I've detailed this is over the next few slides, Paul and Sylvia will break down areas of each of those whys to provide a little bit more colour and detail. And if we could have questions at the end, that would be really helpful. So Paul, over to you.
Thanks very much, John. My apologies for my delay. I was at my desk and then quickly ran down, but obviously 10 seconds too late. I'll actually hand it over to Sylvia to do the first 5 slides, and then she'll hand it back to me because this is the technical information which Sylvia has more information on. So Sylvia, your hands.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. This slide identifies council's community facilities that we're referring to today. Approximately 3/4 of these are operated and managed by not-for-profit and volunteer organisations. The remainder are council operated and often referred to as venues for hire. The next couple of slides will then relate to these venues for hire. Can I have the next slide, please? In the report, we included the table at the top of the slide that shows the fluctuation we've had in bookings in the recent and current year. 2019, 2020 and 2021-22 have been affected by the COVID protection through temporary closures and restrictions. The chart at the bottom left shows the proportion of regular and casual hirers, with the blue signifying the majority being our regular hirers. Again, the proportion of regular hirers has dropped in recent years, and this is a reflection of the impact the pandemic has had on regular classes and activities in our community. The bottom right chart shows the utilisation of our venues for hire over the current financial year. April to June months represent the confirmed bookings that we have in our system at the moment, with the expectation that this will increase once COVID restrictions are lifted. Can I have the next slide, please? This slide is a snapshot of the draft dashboard that staff have been developing for community board use. We introduced this to the Waimaari Spread and Catchment Community Board earlier this week with positive feedback received. The dashboard allows community boards to see better how the council venues for hire are used in their board areas, including the number of bookings, weekday and weekend usage, regular and casual bookings, and the types of activities and bookings that occur in their area. Next slide, please. When we were developing the Community Facilities Network Plan, we showed a lot of static maps identifying the council and non-council facilities in the area, as that was a key principle of the network plan, that it wasn't just about council facilities. And at that time, we recognised that we couldn't work with static maps going forward, and we developed this interactive map with the Smart Cities team in council. So this map is currently available on the council website, and you can put in an address at the top, which will then focus in on a particular area of Christchurch or Banks Peninsula. You can also use the filters to look at specific areas. And then if you click on one of the flags, you'll get the box that appears on the right-hand side, which gives you the opportunity to click through to the website for that page or to find out more additional information. And we think this is a good opportunity to share what we know about community facilities in Christchurch and Banks Peninsula. Next slide, please.
Thanks very much, Sylvia.
Handing over to Paul.
I'll take over from there. So this is Wilston Community Centre. So it's on the park at Ferry Road, right next to the school Te Waka. And we were approached by the school post the winding up of the previous community group that was managing this particular facility on council's behalf. Essentially, the group wound up in the start of this year, unfortunately, but through that, there's been an opportunity for the school board of trustees to approach council to say, hey, look, we used this building under the previous organisation. We'd like to continue to use this building, but also make it available for the wider community. So those are some of the programs that they currently provide, and they've only had the keys for essentially 2 months. So they've been very, very busy activating the building, but also activating the community along with it. And so we're presenting to the community board this afternoon in relation to this particular building. So that's a really good opportunity to, as John alluded to, understand the best way these facilities can be activated. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like to talk about community activation, which is obviously one of the key pieces we've got. Those particular 3 groups, the neighbourhood links, really supporting the local community, specifically through COVID, in relation to food parcel drops, but also just the wider use of that facility for people to be able to drop in. They've also had coffee mornings, sausage sizzles, and also free kai boxes, as I said, which is really, really good. Littleton Recreation Centre. So this has been taken over by the Littleton Recreation Centre Trust. Initially, it was set up with Project Littleton to activate the building. In relation to Nathan, the activation manager on site there, he now holds 13 regular programs and classes, including the youth program and working closely with the local Littleton youth group, but also other classes include yoga, tai chi, arts and crafts, ballet, martial arts, strength and balance for senior citizens, dance fitness, social squash, indoor football and basketball groups. So it shows the multitude of events that are happening in that particular facility, which is really, really good. These activities are supported by 15 volunteer hours per week. So again, there's a key commitment to the community through volunteers helping out to make that happen. The picture at the bottom of the screen is the Lansdowne Community Centre. It's the back wall, and there you can see where the mural was developed just recently by the local people working with the play centre and also the volunteers that run that centre. So they've done a great mural there, and in fact what they're now planning to do is work on the garden around that to incorporate the theme there. So again, really, really positive around what's happening with some of our community facilities that are being activated by the wider community. The next slide I'd like to point out is around rural community support. So here's 3 examples, all based in Banks Peninsula, and although that's not the only places we have rural communities, but here we've got 2, the Port Levy Community Hall, where they recently held a Summer with Your Neighbour event. There were 75 people attended, and they had a barbecue at the hall, and it was really, really well presented. And you can actually see, looking at that photo, what the building looks like inside. So again, the local community have done all of that work, and it does look great. Allendale Community Hall has been really, really busy over the last few months. So during the month of January, there was bookings daily, and they had obviously the maximum of 100 people attending each event. During February, Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays were booked, and the different types of events that were being held there is obviously weddings, birthday parties, community gatherings, and also community meetings. So again, really, really positive in that area. For the top right bubble that we've got there, Aruria Hall, which is on Marshlands Road, a bit off the beaten track, but again, shows the community partnership models really supporting this popular venue for rural locals and also the wider community as well. And this is based on the information we're getting from our community advisors recently, where we're asking what are these facilities used for. So again, we can provide that information to the committee so you can see value for money being spent on these particular groups. One of the things I'd like to cover off as well is our community advisors are continuing to work with the wider community. 2 more examples I've got, although nothing on there, includes the Gators working with the local community and local staff in relation to the High Community Centre and the wider Waikola Park opportunity, where there have been youth creating 1 or 2 bits of mischief, but again, bringing in the Gators will allow them to use the facility and keep an eye on that wider area as well. So that's a real positive. Also, Parklands Community Centre, where one of our community advisors is working very closely with a couple of local groups to get that building continue to be activated. Okay, may I have the next slide, please? Okay, this shows you Harewood Community Hall with the earthquake repairs we recently undertook. So, damaged slightly in the earthquake, but it was pre-earthquake 6% NBS, so we needed to spend some money. The community have been great, continuing to use that building during the time that the repairs hadn't been undertaken, but we finally had some funding and we were able to carry that out. So as you can see there, it's all back to normal, which is great. But a lot of work has been involved to get that building up to 67% NBS. Okay, and the next slide. So this is the Waimaari Road Community Centre refurbishment, recently completed in March of this year. And again, it shows picture on the left, there's picture on the right, what it looked like at the start and what it looks like now. And again, really presenting that building up to a fit for purpose standard where the community will return and enjoy the home comforts that they will continue to have. Also trying to provide a functional specification for our buildings where this will be the base design of what it looks like inside in relation to the colours, but also the materials used and also the equipment inside each of these buildings. Okay, and that's the final slide. Welcome for any questions.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to make my screen bigger so I can see more people and hands. So we've got Jimmy's the first hand up. So Jimmy, have you got questions? What we might do though is try and keep these questions to higher level questions about community facilities. So if you've got something that's more suitable for a community board meeting or community board question, if you could keep it for community boards, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. My question is, what is the council criteria? For instance, like the 21, based on staff presentation, 21 are council the operate those facility. But if back to the last year long-term plan, we did have the 57 proposal disposing the properties, because based on original officer thought, there's no use again, then have through the public consultation. However, because in that time, because there's a whole package together, it's not to separate by the different ward, different area. And also in that time, the information is not sufficient. So actually feedback from the community, from the individual resident or even from community board, is they have no any idea. I just want to take example, just 151, 152, the Gilbert South, those multicultural center, because in that time, no any the person was aware they have a tenant, council have a tenant, but until the end of the last year, they just terminate those contract. So no sufficient information. They are not aware to feedback to the council. They need this kind of facility. So I just want to know, my question is how to improve those engagement and consultation with the community, particularly regarding to those specific each of the community facility, give them aware the update status.
So perhaps Councillor Templeton, if I respond to that, given most of that seems to be not about community facilities, but about council's disposal process. So we got over 500 submissions on that particular part of the long-term plan. So it was one where certainly a proportion of the community did feel they had sufficient information. The information was also sent through to community boards, to all the runanga, to a lot of key stakeholders, including tenants in this environment. So there was some pretty good engagement, but we're happy to look at when we go through this process in future years, how we can continue to improve it. We never rest on the laurels in that matter. The crossover with the community facilities is that we look to drive any decisions based on your strategic plans and your direction that you put in place. And the key document in this case for community facilities is the community facility network plan that John or Paul can much better and more eloquently describe than I can. But I can assure Councillor Chen that we will, as always, be looking to continuously improve our engagement on disposals of land.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Leanne.
Thank you. I guess my interest is not so much in the concept of venues for hire. In fact, that's not a concept that we've really tried to commit or reorient this portfolio to. The idea of community activation of their own facilities is a priority, and there's still, a minority of those. The example that you gave in Littleton is tremendous, and you can see what sort of activation can occur at the local community level, rather than just booking it out to the, Destiny Church for a Sunday session. That's not what we build facilities for. We build facilities in order to support the community and its activation efforts. And so the Littleton was a fantastic example. So can you, and you described Nathan, I can't remember what role you said he had, but who is he employed by? Is he employed by the Littleton project? Is he supported by a funding contract from the council in that regard? And then my second question is, it's been 6 years since I opened the Aranui Waimaari Community Centre, and I acknowledge my conflict of interest as the very first patron of Actus, but it is a position that I hold, and it's relevant to the question that I'm asking today as the Mayor and as a member of this committee.
Thanks very much, Leanne. In relation to the first question, so Nathan Major is the activation manager for the Littleton Recreation Centre Trust. He was previously employed by Project Littleton when they initially took on the activation of that particular building. In relation to funding specifically for his role, at the moment, there is no funding requested via our people for that particular role. However, we are working closely with Littleton Recreation Centre Trust in relation to what costs they incur and how can we help to keep that building operating at the level that it currently is, but also trying to improve it as well.
So he's employed by them?
Yeah, he is employed directly by them.
Great. Yep, great.
Leanne, I can also add that the community board provide a small amount of funding to the centre on a regular basis, and our community development advisors, particularly Tricia Ventum, work with the trust and prepare sort of numerous funding applications, and generally use our networks to leverage the type of opportunities Paul was describing.
Yeah, but you see, resourcing someone like that, to me, is an ideal way that you support a community in terms of its self-activation, self-agency, and developing true opportunities to do real things in real communities. That was a fantastic presentation about what has been able to be achieved there. And our governance staff are amazing out in the communities, but they tend to link into support individuals like that. But if it's just about filling out applications for funding, then you'd really want to see this. I mean, to me, I'm driven by that model of sort of almost delegating the activation responsibilities to the area where they best belong, and that's within the community. The community activists, they know what their community wants. They know what their kids need to be encouraged to do, and those opportunities sit within our facilities. It's much better than a venue for hire. Just book it out to somebody who's just going to book it for 52 weeks of the year for the once a week event that they hold. But anyway, take me on to Littleton. Not Littleton, Aranui.
Okay, so just to let you know, Len and fellow councillors, I am meeting with Rachel and Mark on next week, Thursday. John and I met with them at the start of this year to progress the opportunity that has been sitting on the table for actors to activate the building. Unfortunately, their capability has not been met in relation to, and I presume it's around COVID, but also the other challenges they've been facing over the last couple of years in relation to getting the right resourcing to take on this particular opportunity.
So we're not going to resource it ourselves.
Okay. Sorry about that, Leanne.
We're not going to resource it ourselves. I mean, we've been wanting this for 6 years.
Yeah, so resourcing has been provided to them. It's still sitting with them. But this is the piece that I'll be working with closely, Rachel and Mark, next week and over the coming months to get that progressed.
Look, I'm not going to do this online because in a public setting, because there is another aspect to this. I really want to see this resolved. I cannot believe that we're at 6 years and since it opened. So I'm going to inject myself into that conversation, if I may, to support them through that, and the local councillor might like to do the same.
Right, I was going to suggest that you took that offline, had a chat to Paul and John, and actually maybe went into that conversation. So that's a good way to move that one forward. And if you could let us know how that goes, that would be of interest to all of us. Melanie, then Yanni.
As Paul and Sylvia said, they came to board briefing for the Waihora Sprayed and Cashmere on Monday. And just sort of in response to some of Leanne's questions, have I got this right, that I understood that at least in our board area, there's really only one facility that is run by council and the rest are actually run by community groups, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and the other part to that was that about hiring out venues. I mean, there is desire by different groups in the community for that service, and that provides funding for community groups running facilities to actually, do all the things that require money, like small upgrade type things, and just general maintenance, and looking after the building. Is that right?
So there is funding opportunities for groups to come to and apply for any funding that meets the criteria of those particular funding groups. So yes, there is funding available for groups to apply for, to undertake and support their activation of buildings.
Yes, but the fact that that some of the these venues are hired out to various groups provides an income that helps those groups running them to actually maintain them for community usage.
Yes. So in terms of any agreements that we've got in place, or any partnership agreements we've got in place, whether it be a lease agreement, currently the tenant does receive all the revenue to help cover those operating costs that the council expects them to cover.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Yanni.
Cool, g'day. Can you just talk me through the process? Like, I see that the Wilston community library, is it the community library or the community centre there is going out for requests?
Yeah, so it's the community library. So it's the community space at the new Wilston Community Library,
Right.
Yanni. So,
can you just talk through the process of who's made that decision and how the local community board's been involved?
Okay, so the local staff have made that decision based on the lack of utilisation of that particular facility. We're still going through the process, and it's still in its initial stages. We are going to present to your community board, and I'll provide a briefing next month on the process that we have followed for that particular facility, and the need to go out to the with an RFP. It has been highlighted in the network plan, obviously the steps that we will take, especially if a facility is underutilised, but also if there's an opportunity for a community group to show interest. And we've had some community groups that have shown an interest in that particular building and being able to activate it for the wider community.
Yanni, John
Yanni, that
Philsell
looks
here.
like something you can raise this afternoon at the community board level, I think, because we've got the community board meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. Could I again emphasise, look, the process is underway. It's in its early stages. As Paul said, we're going to the board, and we seek the board's guidance before proceeding. And ultimately, as said in the report, the ultimate decision lies with the board, and we wouldn't proceed without getting their blessing. Early stages.
I think it's...
That's good to hear. Thanks for that.
Yeah, okay. Can I just ask another question, which is, in terms of our community facilities, obviously our service centres and boardrooms are a key component. What thought is going into the new community board structures around where service centres and boardrooms will be based?
Okay, so that's, probably out of the scope of this report. But John, if you want to give us an update of when we might get some information on that.
So the reason for raising it, just for example, like one of the things that we were told at our can I just finish? One of the things we were told previously is that staff are considering that Wilston space that we've just talked about being turned into the boardroom for the community board. So there is a crossover, that's all.
There's a vague crossover, but it's more about a governance thing. So can we just get John to give us an update on that?
Yeah, Sarah, the request permission to note that and come back with a thorough update on exactly where we are and how we aim to take the project through. Probably not prepared now in this meeting to do that.
Yeah, I think what we need is is some sort of guidance on what's going to happen with the transition from the organisation, because for 3 wards especially, that's going to be very new for them. And I think that having an outline of the plan for the transition for both the spaces that are being used, the staffing, and transitioning the various community groups across into those new community boards would be really useful. So if we could have a briefing on that sometime soon, that would be great.
Exactly
Also,
what we had in mind.
Just to kind of like, even if you looked at like Actis and the Aranui Wainoni Community Centre, for example, that might be a good boardroom for the local community board. So there,
Yanni,
it's not just the Wilston crossover. Yeah.
We're going to get an update on it. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. But it needs to align to what we're doing with these facilities as well.
It does. Anne, you're next.
Kia ora. I've been muted. A couple of quick questions. Firstly, with the customer, review that you did, and did much come through about the difficulties in after-hours type use of our facilities? I know that at Tahapua, it's a constant question or request I have is that people are finding it quite difficult to access the building after hours, and whether those sorts of issues are being addressed.
Yep, I can answer that, Anne. Thank you for that. There was your response that came through, did come through to me, and I did provide a response to a colleague, but it may not have been provided to you, so my apologies for that. In relation to our hirers and venues for hire, we've got two groups. We've got the regular hirers who have their access card or their key permanently with them while they've got bookings with council. If it's a casual user, then they need to pick up the card or the key to gain access during the service centre operating hours. So they are informed that at the time of booking, it's confirmed by email, and then they are sent a notification in the week leading up to their booking that they need to go and pick up the key from the service centre during the service centre operating hours. So obviously at Tahapua, we've got summer hours where it's longer and it's open later in the evening and also over the weekends. But then during the winter, it's only 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So the hirer is explained that. What we also have is that we encourage users to have an induction, especially for Tahapua, in relation to the security, in relation to the AV, and also the IT equipment that's provided. So we encourage that, and again, that's made through the service centre desk. So we are looking at improvements in relation to how we market our buildings better, but also what are the security systems we need to put in place so that people don't need to worry about an access card or a key, but in fact a code to enter through a door that's specific for their hire. So those are the sorts of things that we're also looking at progressing as well.
Thank you, Paul. That's really clear. The second question, just where does the discussion about responding to growth happen in terms of community facilities? Is that something that's monitored sort of ongoing in an ongoing way?
So through the network plan, obviously there were some gaps that have been identified. We need to work better with staff internally in relation to planning and what's happening in the wider Christchurch area. So that's a piece of work that is certainly on our radar. We just need to progress that and then understand the steps that need to be taken to ensure that we're engaging with elected members as well.
That's encouraging. And just finally, a bouquet really. I mean, the gifting of the Old Hallsville Library has been has made a huge impact on the social infrastructure out in Hallsville. It's just going so well. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Right. Any further questions on the community facilities report? Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really happy to hear that you're looking at the key access. It's just, that's again another one of those issues that has been raised for a very long time. Do we have a sort of date by which we'll get a solution to people having to physically pick up keys from service desks?
So at the moment I'm trialling, predominantly because of COVID, at 4 of our sites. It will take money because it is a capital expense that I haven't planned money for. So I need to work through that, but I can provide elected members with an update once I've got more information as to A, cost, but also how we would roll that out with our facilities. I'd like to be able to do it as part of the capital renewals and replacements, but that's potentially too long, especially for our council managed ones, but also the community managed ones to undertake.
So the cost of putting like a smart lock on, where people could just get a code, it would seem to save a lot of money in petrol, time. So that would be really cool. And the only other thing I had in relation to that was there was also, I think, a resolution somewhere that we wanted to look at Wi-Fi at our facilities, at our community facilities. Is there an ongoing program looking at that? And also solar was the other one.
Okay, so in relation to Wi-Fi, I am again part of the capital renewals and replacements program. So for Waimaari Community Centre, we've installed Wi-Fi there. We are looking at rolling that out. Again, it costs money. So I have a limited budget in relation to capital, but that's where I am looking at proceeding with that. At the moment, any new builds, we are putting Wi-Fi in. However, for the retrospective fit out of Wi-Fi, it will take time and resource.
Can we approach Enable to sponsor it?
Yeah, we may. I'll talk to some people. Thank you.
Great. And now Phil's got a question.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, guys. This is real good. With regards to the proposed community building that the community board are actually looking at in Gilberthorpe's Road, have we given them any indication that perhaps they could go into the old Hornby Library? Because one day in the not too distant future, it'll be round at the new swimming pool facility, so it will be empty. Have you thought that could probably end up on your plate?
So I understand, and I know Bruce isn't on the phone, or on the call, but his staff are looking into that potential opportunity. So it's certainly front and centre with staff's minds at the moment. Don't know the outcome or the proposal, but yeah, certainly staff are aware of that.
Excellent, thank you.
That's great. Okay, and with no more hands up at this stage, I think we will move to the recommendation, which is to receive the report. So do I have a mover for that? Mike and Melanie for seconding. Okay, any debate? Oh, Andrew. Was that a question or debate?
No, this is debate.
Okay.
So thank you very much indeed. Thanks for the report. And in particular, thanks for drawing attention in the presentation to the success story of the activation of the Littleton Recreation Centre by the Community Trust that has obviously been set up for the purpose. So the way that the community now operates this facility really shows what can happen when we work with communities, when we trust communities, when we genuinely build capacity in communities, which then allows them to deliver activities in these facilities quite differently than council would do it themselves. Partnership with other groups, recruitment of volunteers, community connections, community activation are all very different and all land very differently when that's done by the community rather than for the community. The sense of ownership, the resulting uplift in interest, in participation is on a completely different level. Now, not all communities have got the capability or the capacity to do this. And where we don't, we need to realise and we need to understand that. But also we need to remember that we can help to build community capacity. So councillors that were around at the time might recall that we gave a grant to Project Littleton in the very early stages of this project so that they could build capacity within their own organisation. And it was exactly that allowed the conversations that led to the setup of the community trust and the activation that we see today happen. So after the earthquakes, we completed the repairs on the facility. The community was really frustrated that council had completed this building and there were no staff, there were no formal organised activities in there. Essentially, we finished a building and said to the community, here's your finished building, what do you want to do with it? That led to frustration and disappointment, but it also led to some really good conversations within the community about what they wanted. So community conversations, blue sky thinking, That in turn led to conversations about what partnership between the community and council could look like, realizing that there were some big differences in culture between the way a community group works and thinks and the way that a big organisation like council works and thinks. And there were some difficult conversations. There were times when it looked as if this project wasn't going to be able to work at all. But we've got what we've got today, what we've heard about this morning, a well-activated building, a community which has built capacity to activate that building beyond what people thought was even possible when this conversation started. But I come back to the capacity building piece and I relate that to the comments that were made about Aranui. If this could be done in Littleton with assistance building capacity and getting resourcing in place, I'm sure that can be done in other parts of town and Aranui would be included in that. And I really look forward to seeing what we can achieve in Aranui, realising some of the difficulties we went through in Littleton, but realising we've really found success at the end of what at times was quite a difficult, but in the end successful journey.
Thank you very much. I might set my timer for Jimmy. So Jimmy, your debate, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the start the comprehensive report. This report is very good. Yeah, but because those community facility, because so complicated. Because based on this report, we can see if 91 or 82 in those council community facility, 61 is a community operate, 21 is council operate, and we also have a kind of partnership. And also have kind of higher those the value to the community. And if we review further, we have digital to kind of to hire this facility by the menu to hire this one, and also we have the expression of interest. This one of my view is a key is to strengthen those engagement and also the consultation with the community. Because the council try to maximize this local value and also encourage more this facility have volunteers take a lead owned by and operated by the community. Then those consultations should be and engagement should be very, very crucial, etc. Particularly, I still would like to emphasize all those the proposal disposing those properties, because there is a bigger gap between the council, the view, and the community, the view. So this one only through the strengthening of the engagement and the communication. Otherwise, this one is can can reduce, council the level of the service, and also probably create is more percentage of dissatisfied with council services. So this is my recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And Melanie.
Thank you. This is just going to be short. Look, I think the thing that probably we haven't highlighted that was in the presentation is actually the community facilities map and how that's now interactive. And I know Sylvia presented it. I think that's game changing in terms of understanding what community facilities we have and thinking through to their websites. It's something that we've been wanting for the whole time I've been either on council or community board, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And just to also highlight that it said in one of those earlier slides that basically 3/4 of our community facilities are managed or operated by our communities, and I do think community boards work with community groups and the individuals that put a lot of time into it very well, and I'd like to see that, obviously, that continue. And I'm very grateful for the work that Paul and Sylvia have been doing in this area, because we've been needing it for years. So thank you very much.
It's great. Thanks, Melanie. And Leanne.
Sorry, I'll be really short as well. So I just want to kind of remind people that social capital is not built for communities. It can only be built by communities. And I'm kind of sick of central government sort of saying that they need to do things for the community. If we're going to face issues like climate change, if we're going to face issues like resilience to natural hazards, then we have to we have to support the building of resilience. Building social capital within communities is something that communities must do for themselves, and we need to support them. It might sound simple, but it's interesting when you read all of the literature about resilience. You know that it's not developing the plan, the disaster plan or the emergency plan or the response plan. It's not the plan that matters. It's the coming together to build the plan that matters. And that's because communities get to know each other, they get to understand their strengths, and they get to understand that you build on strengths in order to meet needs. You don't start with a deficit-based model. Asset-based community development, I've said it quite a few times, ABCD, it's easy to remember, and I'd like us to make sure that we're doing that with our community facilities, is enabling, supporting, facilitating, and building capacity, particularly in communities that often struggle more than others to find that capacity within. They've got the heart, but they haven't got the financial resources. So that's my plea.
It's great. Thank you, Leanne. Anyone else? No. In that case, I will put that. All in favour, please raise your thumbs. Any against? No. Okay. In that case, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Paul, Sylvia and John, for the presentation. That was really good. And if anyone's got any feedback on that, could you please flick it through to Simone. Right, so now we move to the Heritage Incentive Grants. So page 35. And we've got someone here to present those. Victoria, welcome. So if you want to give us a really brief overview, and then we'll move to each one individually.
Kia ora koutou. Lovely to see everybody there in front of me. It's quite daunting rather than around the edges, but there we go. Here is the next batch of the Heritage Incentive Grant fundings for you to look at. There is one more report to come at the end of this financial year with some others. There's quite a diverse range of scale and projects and outcomes in this report, which really does reflect and represent the diversity of the heritage, the tangible heritage that we're looking at protecting through these grants. And also, if you look at the total eligible costs versus the actual amount recommended, you can see just how much of an incentive these grants act as, that they will feed a small amount of ratepayers funding into projects, which then in themselves incentivize further investments by the owners of the buildings or the kaitiaki of the buildings to invest further in heritage. So the first one I'd like to start with is the West Rose window at St Michael's and All Angels. I don't know how many people have actually been in the church and seen this window, but it is absolutely staggeringly beautiful. It is not just part of the architecture of this landmark building, but it is actually a very unique piece of artwork and craftsmanship in its own right. Very sadly, at the moment, it is in what the Conservatives have called a critical condition, which means that we do risk losing it. So there is a real urgency to undertake fairly significant conservation here, which does involve removing all the windows and basically de-leading everything, cleaning all the glass, replacing the glass, then re-leading it and putting them back in. So it's a highly skilled piece of work that only a few people can do, but it's really necessary if we are to keep this beautiful piece of art as well as architecture in the city for future generations to enjoy, whether they're visitors to the city or users of that particular church.
Okay, so what we might do is just take any questions on that particular one first up. Sorry, I thought, where's Leanne gone? I thought Leanne had a question on that one. She's dropped off. One of these years. Yep.
I put my hand up.
Yep.
So, look, thank you for that. I agree with you. It's absolutely magnificent. And I mean, St Michael's is just a treasure. I did send councillors the link to the heritage listing that it has, category 1, and the significance of its status. And hang on, I'll sort of mention this. It's one of the largest timber Gothic revival churches in the southern hemisphere. So this is significant internationally. But this is a small parish and they struggle with funding. I was worried about option 1, where it says staff consider the project would be unlikely to proceed or be delayed beyond the anniversary memorial, which is, I think, is it October this year, with a reduced level of funding. It says grant funding of 13,000. So are you saying that it definitely will be enough? Or what I'm worried about is that's not enough for what is a very small parish that struggle to keep things going as it is.
We have our hands tied to a certain extent by the operational guidelines for this grant scheme, which actually has a cap of 50% of the eligible works as the maximum the grant can do, because they are incentive grants. The parish, I've spoken to them, they are hoping to leverage off the council's grant support. A lot of people who get heritage incentive grants from the council are then able to access other funding, and we can write letters of support which enables them to go to other funding agencies. Nothing is certain in these uncertain times, unfortunately. We are hopeful that they will at least be able to get some of the windows done, and we'll continue to work with them to do all we can in terms of letters of support for other funding agencies. But that's the maximum. 50% is the maximum we're able to give as a heritage incentive grant.
So if this were a, if it was a grant for anything else, we wouldn't have that restriction on the percentage. And I understand, is there no other heritage grant that is not framed as an incentive grant? Or let me put it a different way. Would you recommend to fund more if you weren't constrained by the 50% rule?
Gosh, that's a one to throw at left field, because we're so focused with these grants on the fact that they are incentives. I mean, I've been looking at trying to find other ways to get funding for them with, is there an option for us to find a student or someone who could come and make a documentary of the work being done, and then they could apply for an intangible heritage grant that could sort of come in around the side. So we are looking at other creative ways to fund, but we no longer have the landmark fund, which could give a fixed sum regardless of a percentage. So the only fund that we here at the council have for heritage is that heritage incentive grant fund, which has got that 50% capping. I mean, you are the decision makers. You can make a decision to override your own guidelines if you choose to. But we as staff can only recommend where we are.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. I mean, for answering the question. I mean, it's and I don't want to put you in a difficult position. It's absolutely inappropriate, but it's a helpful reminder that we do have the ability to make a decision that would be in conflict with our own guidelines, as long as we specifically spell that out. But I haven't had a chance to debate this or discuss this with councillors. So I'm just wondering whether it could come to council next week instead of deciding it here and now. I don't know how others feel.
Okay, so I think we might just leave this one for now and have some other discussions and come back to it. But in the meantime, we'll move into questions for the other ones.
Yeah, and Brendan's just having a quick chat to Sam Callender, who's in the room, to see if there is any other funding that he knows of that they may be eligible to look at applying for.
Yeah, okay. So, so people have read the agenda. So we're moving now on to the St Barnabas Church Hall Conservation and Upgrade Project. Does anyone have any questions on that one? Phil?
Yeah, thank you. I note that a lot of this money is needed for going to fixing the slate roof. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Down at the wastewater treatment plant, we were last week just sculling around. I noticed there's a whole lot of heritage stuff there. There's Horsell Porry stone. There's all sorts of things, but there is a number of boxes of slate there. Who owns those, and can we give them to these guys, which would help, because I know slate doesn't grow on trees, and if we've got some sitting there doing nothing, if we own it, can we give it to them to help them repair their roof?
I can definitely follow that one up and see what the options are around that. Yes.
Thank you.
That material may be, I'm not sure what slate you're referring to, obviously, but that may be part of the provincial council building material, or one of the other heritage buildings that is being stored specifically for another building.
Well, let's find out. That's what Phil's asking.
Definitely. And we have, I mean, we've worked with the slate roofers in the past whenever we've known of buildings that are having the roofs changed and demolished. So a lot of the skilled craftsmen who work on the slate roofs do have stores of slate that we've taken from other buildings that have been lost. But we'll follow that one up and come back to you.
Right. Thank you very much. Did you have another question there, Phil? No. So 23 Mandeville Street, reapproval of a LATS grant for conservation and maintenance project. Do we have any questions on this one? No. And Ferrymead Park Limited Kinsey Cottage and Darkroom Conservation Project. Any questions on that one? No. Okay. So moving through to the decision time. Leanne, were you wanting to have some more work done on St Michael's before making a decision on that one?
Well, I mean, I kind of would like an indication from councillors if they would support just even deferring it to next week. Because if that were the case, then we could just refer it to the council, the decision on that one to the council meeting next week.
I'm happy to do that. Does anyone have any objections to referring that one to the council meeting next week?
Yeah.
No, it may come back with exactly the same report.
Just as long as we've got the right information, because as we've discussed before about making decisions on the fly type things, that would be
and in a way that's why I'd rather refer it to another meeting than and also put it off
making the decision on the fly. Right, okay, in that case, can we please swap out, so I'm going to move the recommendations then, except with number 1 and 2 being replaced with refer the application for the parish of Christchurch to the council meeting next week, whatever the actual appropriate date is. Mike, you happy to second that? And 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be as they are. So Simone, have you got that?
Yep, confirming we've got that. So just to confirm, we've got recommendations 1 and 2 will be deferred to council next week, and the remaining recommendations are being approved today.
Sorry. Can we see that on the screen? Yeah.
Yep, one moment.
It's tiny. Okay. Okay, so that's good in there. Right, so that has been moved and seconded. Do we have any debate on that?
Sorry, Sarah, could I get the mover and seconder again?
Oh, sorry, that was me and Councillor Davidson.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, are people happy for me to put those as a group? It sounds like there were very few questions. Okay. No debate. In that case, I will put those. All in favour, please raise your thumbs and I will scroll through the pictures. Excellent. Anyone against? No, I declare that passed. Thank you very much. And back into my next screen. Okay, and now we've done that one. So we're actually now going to move to an item that's not currently on the agenda. It's just an update from Councillor Galloway on the Mayor's Welfare Fund. So the minutes weren't able to come to this meeting, but she wants to give us a quick update just ahead of our Capital Endowment Fund applications. Yanni, is this about the Mayor's Welfare Fund?
I know it's just about the timing. I just wanted to check if we're having a break any time soon.
A break now would be good. 10 minutes.
Okay, we'll do Anne first and then we'll come back for Capital Endowment Fund because Anne is only going to talk for a couple of minutes.
Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity. It is a bit unusual to do this, but it seemed like it's important, I think, to share the really excellent information that we get through Tahua Taupua, the Mayor's Welfare. So it's a privilege for me to chair that. And members of the group include St Vincent de Paul, Christchurch Methodist Mission, Age Concern, Ministry of Social Development, Pito, Kainga Ora, Family Works Presbyterian Support, He Wakatapu, Food Bank Canterbury, and City Mission. And so when we get together, we always just do a brief overview and people report back on challenges and successes that they've had. This is a incredibly strong group that represents the infrastructure that is there in our city to support those that are the most vulnerable. And some of the challenges that I thought it would be good for you to be aware of that have come through are things like the mental health issues. These won't be new to you. The number of people in emergency housing, the availability of housing, the need for more housing, especially for young people, the impact on Omicron on older people, particularly with isolation, getting information about what support there is, particularly to our multicultural communities, the increased abuse of alcohol and drug issues in the city, the cost of living, and the ongoing demand for food. And that's balanced, though, with also some of the successes that we're having. St Vincent de Paul are building a housing complex for young families. MSD is funding community connections so that older people who are isolating are supported. We have a huge effort of these people who are working in these agencies to support those who are the most vulnerable. And so I wanted to just give, just to say that this is a bit of a snapshot of what's happening in the city that we often don't see, and it's important for councillors to know. I also wanted to just take the moment to acknowledge and thank deeply the work that Matthew Mark has done through the City Mission. And he now has left that role, but he's been incredibly instrumental in building the strength of the caring community in Christchurch. So I wondered if, Leanne, we've done anything to acknowledge Matthew Mark and whether we should, as a council, do that going forward, something to think about perhaps. But also too to thank Sam Callender, whose last meeting it is today, and the work that he's done alongside me and Tahua Taupua, Mayor's Welfare. It's been great working with you, Sam. Thanks for what you've done. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And my phone is ringing in the background, but I'm not going to go and answer it, sorry. So we have a choice now. We've got one item left for the day. So we could either break for 10 minutes and extend when we finish, or we can get through the Capital Endowment Fund and then be finished for the day.
Let's just get it done.
Yeah, here.
Other people.
I'd support a break just because the Wilston proposal we haven't had a huge amount of time to talk that
through. But we can do that. Okay.
We need a break. Come on, guys. These things are really hard.
Can we just make it a 5-minute break? So can everyone please be back here at 12 minutes past 11, and we will start then as soon as
surely we could just go to 11:30, and that's only 2 hours of actual meeting time before we have a break. If we don't quite get through it all, then we could have a break. There's no reason why we can't get through this within 20 minutes.
I don't often say it, but I agree with Mike. So.
Yes, you do. You often say it.
Actually, I've never said it, but I agree with both of you.
I'm just
People are either going to
this,
support the amendment or not.
The Zoom environments are really challenging, and I do think we need to be taking more regular small breaks.
Okay, so everyone is to be back here you have 5 minutes. We are starting in 5. There is no waffling around. And then we're going to get straight into questions on the Capital Endowment Fund.
Thanks.
I think we should have had a debate on that. 3 minutes each.
Wasting time now.
So what time?
Okay, so we're moving, Simone, are we back live?
Yep, we are live.
Yep, that's great. So welcome back, everyone. So we now move on to item 11, which is the Capital Endowment Fund applications. We're going to be moving through them. We're going to do the St Vincent de Paul, then North Avon BMX Club, then Canterbury Softball, and Wilston Brass we're going to leave till last because I've got a conflict on that one. So we've got, I can see who's in the, I can't, you're all too tiny. Sam, you're sitting there. So Sam, who has worked us through so many grant applications in different areas for the last few years. Thank you very much for coming in for this last one for us today. And I wish you all the best for your next steps. So thank you very much for all the work you've done.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, go on.
I was just going to say thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with Council in this way and to introduce my replacement in the role. It's really pleasing to introduce Lexi Rubin again to you, but now as the incoming community funding team lead. So Lexi's been in the funding team for a year or so. So it's great to hand over to someone who's already on the ground running. She comes to this role with leadership experience and grant making experience at Ngāi Tahu and Tuahiri, and has almost finished her MBA at Canterbury University too. So it's a very capable replacement. So yeah, wanted to introduce her.
Great, welcome Lexi.
Kia ora, thank you.
Into the new role.
I'm very excited.
So if you guys could talk us through just a quick overview, and then we'll get into specific questions on each of the first three.
Sure, thank you. So the Capital Endowment Fund was established in 2001 from a sale of an Orion investment. In 2018, the Council established a process for welcoming or to funding community organisations projects, funding projects that are something new, something long-term that benefit the city. And the process for that is to work in with organisations that have a relationship with council through the initiative they're doing, projects that align with the strategic direction of that particular area. And it's great to have 4 really strong applications that have worked through that process with council teams to present to you today. All 4 are excellent and have really good long-term benefits for the city. In the capital, the fund for the available balance for the Capital Endowment Fund is calculated based on projected interest revenue from the capital balance, which is for this year the remaining available funding is $871,000. Based on the current recommendations in front that staff have put forward, you would be carrying forward $71,000 into the next year. There's talk of some amendments this council might make, so we'll perhaps talk to the precise balance later on. But the recommendations we have leave a little bit of wiggle room. So yeah, with that, are there any questions generally about the fund and how it works before we get into specifics?
Any questions from anyone? No, that's good because we have done a couple of these before. So specific questions now on the first 3 only, please, and not Wilston Brass. Any questions on those? No. Okay, in that case, what we will do is we will move those 3 recommendations as a block. Mike, are you happy to move those? Yeah. Do I have a seconder for those? Melanie? So what we're doing is we're moving to the grants for St Vincent de Paul, North Avon BMX Club and Canterbury Softball. We have a mover and a seconder. Is there any debate? No, in that case, I'll put that motion. All in favour, please put your thumbs up. Scrolling through desperately. Okay, any against? No, in that case, I declare those ones all carried. And I'm going to hand over the chairing of the rest of the meeting to Councillor Coker, who will go through the Wilston Brass and the close of the meeting with the karakia. Okay, so over to you, Melanie.
Thanks, Sarah. First, I ask Sam if you have any specific comments on Wilston Brass first, or do you want to go straight to questions?
Yeah, sure. I'll introduce Josh Wharton, who has been the lead assessor on their application, to provide some introductory comments.
Thanks, Sam. Just by way of introduction, I'll take the report as generally read, but I wanted to highlight a few reasons of why we reached the recommendation that we did. So the rebuild target of $4 million is quite a large sum to raise for a group with roughly 120 members where their annual surplus is around 30,000. We also looked at the reach and depth of community service that this facility would support. And while it's undoubtable that Wilston Brass have a very large reach, perhaps they might deliver slightly less depth than a St Vincent de Paul housing project, for example. I should also note that after our staff collaboration, Wilston Brass have resubmitted their application with a request to raise their applied amount to 500,000 rather than 350,000 as in the agenda. As staff, we considered the application in context of that new information, but decided not to amend the staff recommendation at this time.
Great, thank you, Josh. I guess I'll move to questions now. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask staff? No, and so we have an amendment that Yanni sent through again. So I wonder if you could put that up, maybe Simone, onto the screen, I guess. Celeste, have you got a question?
Sorry, I couldn't find the hand. So I just wanted to kind of check. So was it 130,000 to the next financial year? Is that what the most recent proposal was? 2022, 23?
Yeah, so Yanni's put through a few different amendments, and the last one was for 270 for this financial year and then 130 for next financial year. Okay.
So based on the carry forward from what's left over from this year, what does that leave in the pot for other groups?
Yeah, sure. So currently in next year's available projected balance is 417,000. If the amended decision is made, we would be carrying forward $21,000 from this year to next, which takes it up to 438. But then there's also 200,000 in the draft annual plan that's earmarked for Pukeko Centre, pending Council's decision on that, which therefore would leave 238 in the fund. Should you approve both parts of that resolution, that's taking 130 off, you'd be left with $108,000 in next year's Capital Endowment Fund for community organisations to put to use, or other uses.
Thanks, Sam. Did you have any other questions, Celeste?
I guess how have the Wilston Brass Band, is the timing of this, because I know with the Pukeko they're sort of at the end stage of their project, have the brass band begun any of the actual build, or is this sort of future planning?
This is future planning. This is
So they're looking to get funding now for...
This is the first block of funding that they would secure in progress of this $4 million total that they're chasing for the construction of the build. So they haven't begun any actual construction yet.
And in terms of the matched, that they don't have a requirement to obviously match the funding. So
we haven't used that language.
But
essentially they do. Part of the requirement in the resolution is that they've achieved satisfactory fundraising to make the project viable. So if the project's 4 million and we've given them 400,000, they're going to have to raise another 3.6 before we release the grant. Therefore, in essence, they will need to match the funding. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. So potentially they wouldn't get paid out till 2024. So they'd be applying for funding this and next financial year. So quite soon, but the funding itself might not be available until 2024.
Yeah, the way we do a lot of these Capital Endowment Fund grants is council, when they decide to make the grant, it gives them confidence to go ahead and get other grant funding, etc. But we won't release the grant until they've evidenced the project can go ahead. And if they don't meet those fundraise agreements, then the grant is withdrawn and the money is returned to the Capital Endowment Fund for further allocation.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So Jimmy, have you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Sam. I ask you, because the total for the construction of the building is 4 million, am I right? but either we grant the 200K or 400K for a split for 2 years, etc. There's focus on the brand room only. Brand room, am I right?
It would be a reconstruction of the 2 band rooms that are on the site at 37 Daniel Street.
But regarding to the payment schedule, have any the prioritize?
Can I try to understand your question? You're asking, would we somehow prioritise or earmark the funding for certain aspects of the project?
Yes.
No, not as the resolution's currently written, nor in terms of our recommendation. It was simply a grant towards the construction of the building. So they wouldn't use the grant for wages for their staff members or for trips with the band. It would be for the build project, but we're not earmarking it to specific parts of that build project.
Okay, last question. And Rata Foundation and also Lottery, they're pending for the funding. Each one is 500K. What's the rationale? Not yet, still pending. Is timing or some any reason?
Good question. It'll be timing. So pending will mean they've either applied or they're in the process of applying, but the decision is yet to be made.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Right, Mike, your chance for a question or two.
Thank you. Just curious, are you aware of any other potential community projects that may be in need of capital endowment funding in the next financial year? I just, obviously we're going to reduce that next year's fund by quite a lot if we approve this, and I'd be concerned if we know there's actually something coming up.
Sure. So there's nothing in my specific pipeline, but I would say that in the last 3 years, which is as long as I've been in this role, we've had it between 8 and this year 4. So that's kind of the range of the number of eligible projects come to the fund. And after the annual plan decision in June, we will go out to the community and say, right, we'll start looking around for those suitable projects. So there's nothing there now, but it's not to say there won't be in 6-12 months' time.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
G'day, Sam. All the best for the future, wherever you're heading, buddy.
Cheers.
Take care. Just I'm on the right track. If we do the band and Pukeko Centre next year, we've got around about $108,000 left. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so we can do both. One's not going to stop the other. I understand what Mike's saying. There could be a biggie around the corner that is going to empty us out, but I still think as councillors we should look at annual plan or next year just trimming up a little bit of what goes to some of the other recipients of this money, but bigger places that are being funded for the next 10 years or 8 years. So we might be able to just take a little bit, not a lot, out of their ones just to give us a little bit of play money, so to speak, if we get caught short.
Thanks, Phil. I'm not sure that was a question. Right, Pauline.
Yeah, thank you. We'll miss you, Sam. Good luck with your future. Here comes a question from me. Why are we asking them to rebuild by 2025? Just wondering.
So we've put a time limit on grants like this so that it doesn't go on for year after year with the money sort of not being able to be used by somebody else. So we're putting some time pressure. But if councillors wants to give them more time to raise funds, then they could. But Josh is going to add something.
Yeah, the rationale behind the 2025 date is that the current band room is earthquake damaged.
Okay, so we've assessed it as being unsafe for any longer than that to use. So they've got a sense of urgency around this. Is that correct?
I think the earthquake legislation says that it has to be repaired by 2025. So that's the date.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. That clarifies that. And why did they only receive $500,000 from insurance?
I couldn't tell you why, but that is the amount that they have received. Their current band room is a very old band room, and has existed since 1906, so that might contribute to the sum, and it's significantly smaller than the facility that they're proposing here.
Okay, thank you.
Phil, did you have any more questions? Your hand's still up. Okay, thanks. Mike.
Thank you. I'm just a little bit concerned about how low that we are going to make next year's remaining pot. And obviously this project's going to take a little bit of time to actually happen. And so I'm just wondering if there's a potential, and what staff's thoughts are, of actually spreading that 130 over the following 2 financial years instead of just or having it in the next financial year.
That could be done. It wouldn't make a massively material difference in the sense that the applications you're seeing to Capital Endowment Fund are of significant value. So really you'd be keeping 65k extra in the fund, so there'd be 165 there, which is still, valuable. But it may not be enough to run an entire funding round. You just have to take it as it comes. And John's keen to share his views on the matter.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davidson. I was just going to offer the fact that maybe the committee could commit to funding in the 2023-24 year when that the fund may have a little more value in it. Noting the fact that the Pukeko Centre in the draft annual plan goes for 2 years, so you can either split you could split it over 2 years, or have a slightly increased amount next year and a decreased amount in the 2023-24 year. So there are a couple of options. As Sam said, either way, if council support the Pukeko Centre and this, the fund is not looking anywhere near its traditional size over that period. So there are options.
So just, and I guess this will go to Yanni because it's his amendment, but therefore if we actually just did the whole 130 in the 23-24, it won't financial year, it will free up a lot more money for other community groups next financial year, but won't impact the Wilston Brass project.
Yeah,
is that correct, John?
I would suggest that's a fair call, given that they've got a large amount of fundraising to do, and they'll know they've got that 130 coming later on or available. It probably won't hold them back.
Yeah, Councillor Davidson, one of the advantages of making a commitment this year and signalling a commitment into the future is it gives the Wilston Brass fundraisers absolute confidence that council is keen to assist, and it allows the Wilston Brass to pass that confidence over to other fundraising efforts. It's always good to get a start, and that might provide the start that they need.
Thank you. Through you, Mel, could we just ask if Yanni would be happy to make that change to his amendment? I was
going to do that, but first I'll just get Celeste's question and then we can ask Yanni.
Sorry, I was actually just going to say what Mike was going to say. Thanks.
Okay, great. So, Yanni, would you be happy to alter your amendment to make the 130,000 for the 2023-24 financial year?
Yeah, I just don't quite know what the impact would be on their project. It would be good to just check with them. We could make it subject to confirmation from the Wilston Brass Band, if it was going to be pushed.
We asked that, and staff said it probably.
Oh, have the staff talk to the Wilston Brass Band, have they?
Well, they've got
hang on, Pauline. So, Sam, can you answer that? Or Josh?
Josh is saying that they want to be doing the building of the new band room in 2024. So given that if we were doing it from that year to 23-24, we could release those funds in July 23 which was ample time for them to complete their build.
So that would be fine. And if that's the desire, then I'm happy to move it to the 230. So it goes back to the original request for that year.
So Yanni, just to clarify, you're asking now for 270 for 21-22 and now 230 for 23-24. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, Sam, do we know what the amount would be in that financial year? Are we overcommitting ourselves? If it was to be 230? Or do we not know?
Available. Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Josh. So to be clear about the available balance projected in 23-24, assuming perhaps no carry forwards or whatever, there's 300,000 available to be distributed. Bearing in mind that there's already a lot of sort of forward committed things funded, so you'd be adding another one to that, and that's your decision.
So, Yanni, you've heard that. Would you like to keep it at the 230 or keep it at the 130? Because this is reliant this is reliant on having a seconder. So I think
that's fine to keep it at the 130. I just wanted to check though, the 23-24 year has got 500 remaining. Why has it got so much less? Is that just because of the other? Is there anything in the draft annual plan that will change that 500 at the moment? And the other question I'd have as staff is, given that Christchurch and Z are getting so much funding for events which are not taking place, what's the process to look at what their quantum is? Because it does seem a bit strange that they are getting a significant amount of funding when events aren't happening.
Yanni, I think we just leave it about Christchurch and Z and just let Sam answer your first question, and then I'll go to Celeste.
Sure, I'm not sure where you mean 500 is available. It's 300, but there's less money in the fund in general because interest rates have been lower. So we're projecting, the finance team project forward what the earnings on the capital balance will be.
Sorry, Sam, can I just clarify? It's on page 77. I'm just looking at the chart on page 77 that shows 500 available for allocation.
The version I have in front of me, which was updated this morning from finance, is 300. So I'd need to get back to you on where the difference of that is. The difference, will perhaps be the version I'm looking at has the 200 that's in the draft annual plan for Pukeko Centre. There you go. So in your report, there's 500 available, but my figure of 300 includes room for the pending decision on the Pukeko Centre, which is 200 from the next 2 financial years.
Okay, thanks for that, Sam. Right, Celeste, have you got a question?
Can we separate out those amounts so we can vote on those separately? And I guess the other part is a comment. If they get the 270, then that's already signalling to funders that the council have made a commitment. And then it's, I guess, like a lot of community groups, it's their responsibility to sort of show that they can then deliver the next stage, which they can reapply for in future years. So they'll have the opportunity to do it. So it's still putting them forward substantially.
I'd like to make one clarification that hasn't been mentioned yet, but the process set out in 2018 by councillors was that community groups couldn't apply multiple times for one project to Capital Endowment Fund. So Wilston Brass can't come back and apply later. What's happening with Pukeko Centre is a little slightly different in terms of process because Pukeko Centre received Capital Endowment funding through this committee, and now in the annual plan it's come through from that side of things, and if elected members wish to support it in that way they can, but it hasn't. The Pukeko Centre hasn't come back and reapplied to Capital Endowment Fund because that's outside the scope of what groups can do based on the process council has set. So Wilson Brass wouldn't be able to reapply later to Capital Endowment Fund?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to leave it.
Hang on, Yanni. I haven't asked for you to speak. Sorry. So Pauline, could you ask your question?
Thank you. In the application, this is a general question for applications. When it says rata lotteries, blah, blah, pending. Does that mean that they've actually lodged an application for those organisations?
In general, not necessarily. It can mean they plan to apply. So that depends on funding rounds, etc. With large-scale projects like this, groups sometimes like to have some decent grants or fundraising in place before applying to the other funds. DIA, for example, expect certain amounts being raised before they apply. So pending can mean they plan to apply or they have applied but haven't found it yet. Ross, do you know specifically about this one?
Not a specific answer, just that in conversations between Wilston Brass and both RADA and Lotteries, those other two organisations were looking to see local territorial authority support for the project before they would consider committing large funds towards it as well. So this really is their first step in the process.
Right. So that's why we would, by granting a decent chunk, we will be leading the way and giving other funders confidence to contribute as well. So that's quite a responsibility for us, isn't it? So that's right. I've got that right. Thank you.
All right. Celeste, I just want to check if you had another question because your hand's still up. Cool. Okay, Yanni, you can. Have you got a question?
Just to clarify, now that I'm aware of the possible Pukeko Centre implications for the 23-24 year. I'm sorry, I thought it was a year before that. I'm happy to leave it at the 130 for that year. So happy for what's now on the screen to be put.
Great.
But yeah, cool. Just leave it at that.
Okay. Any last questions, and then I'll ask for a seconder. Right. So do we have a seconder for Yanni's amendment? So Pauline, sorry, I can only see the side of the screen. So I've got Pauline Osel first. So we've got Councillor Johansson moving and Councillor Cotter seconding. And we'll do these amendments separately to each other. And I think it might be easiest to ask for a division for these because it may be complicated. So are we able to do that, Simone, please?
Yep, one moment. So just to confirm, you're wanting to put number 2 and then number 3 to separate votes by division. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. One moment. Okay, so for the $270,000 grant under the 2021-2022 Capital Endowment Fund. Okay, so Deputy Mayor Turner?
Yes.
Councillor Chen?
Yes.
Councillor Chu? Is Councillor Chu there?
Sorry, could you come back to me?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Chu?
It sounds like she wants to have her vote towards the end.
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
You do this?
I don't know.
Let's not waste time. Let's just move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no vote.
Councillor Coker?
Yes.
Councillor Cotter?
Aye.
Councillor Donovan?
Yes.
Councillor Davidson?
Aye.
Councillor Galloway?
Aye.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Johansson?
Aye.
Councillor Kewen?
Yes.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Major?
Yes.
Councillor McClellan?
Aye.
Councillor Scandrett?
Yes.
Councillor Templeton? Oh, that's right. Yes, sorry. Sorry, Sarah. Okay, and then Councillor Chu.
Sorry, I was just having trouble. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that is 13 in favour and 2 against. Okay, and moving to the second one of making a grant of 130,000 from the 2023 to 24 Capital Endowment Fund. Okay, so Deputy Mayor Turner.
Yes.
Councillor Chen.
Yes.
Councillor Chu.
Yes.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Cotter.
Aye.
Councillor Donovan.
Yes.
Councillor Davidson.
Aye.
Councillor Galloway.
Yes.
Councillor Goff.
No.
Councillor Johansson.
Aye.
Councillor Kewen.
Yep.
Councillor McDonald.
No.
Councillor Major.
Yes.
Councillor McClellan.
Aye.
Councillor Scandrett.
Aye.
Thank you. That is 13 for and 2 against.
We could have done those together, but that's very good. Great. So I think we're at the end of our meeting now. So I'll call on the lovely Councillor Anne Galloway to do our ending karakia. Thank you.
Nau mai. Me mahi tahi tātou mo te oranga o te katoa na mihi nui tēnā koutou katoa. So that means let's continue to work together for the well-being of all. Kia ora.
Thank you, everybody.
Kia ora. Kia ora, thanks, everyone.
Enjoy your lunch.
Thanks.
Thank you.